Alright, hello everyone, welcome to another video. Today we're doing a tier list on all of the abilities from Kirby 64. Why am I doing this? Well, Kirby and the Forgotten Land just came out, and in this game there's a small amount of abilities just like Kirby 64, but they fleshed them out to the point where they can apply to any given situation. And this is something that you also see in the 2D games such as Star Allies. There's huge movesets for every ability to make sure that they're all fairly balanced. I wanted to go back to Kirby 64, back to a time where things weren't balanced at all. An ability did one thing, and it could be great or awful. So moving over to the tier list here, you can see we have 5 different tiers. The Forgotten Land, Planet Robobot, Return to Dreamland, Triple Deluxe, and Star Allies. So you can see it's a little bit of a tier list within a tier list, and I think these are pretty objective. I don't think there's anything subjective about those. I'm going to be judging these on 3 points that I kind of just made up. Number 1, how much space does the attack cover? Is it basically a screen nuke, or does it hit the spot directly in front of you? Number 2, how does it affect your mobility? If it decreases your mobility, maybe you have to stop to use the ability. That's a negative. If it increases your movement, maybe you go faster or something, that's definitely a plus. And then number 3, how cool is it? And this one's reserved for kind of 2 abilities in particular in this game that we'll go over later. So first we'll start with the basic abilities. If you don't know, in Kirby 64 you can combine abilities. This includes doubling up on the same ability, so burning plus burning, or combining abilities such as burning and cutter. So to start, we're just gonna go over the simple abilities. Burning. Yes, this is burning, not to be confused with fire. So first of all, it does increase your movement speed. It also basically makes you invincible. The only area of effect is on Kirby, but you have an invincibility shield around you while you shoot forward. So I'm gonna say you'd expect these to be like at the bottom because they're just single abilities, but this one's pretty good. I feel like this goes in A on its own. Next up is Spike. So imagine burning, right? It moves you forward, you're invincible. Spike's very similar, except for the fact that you can't move. You just sit there. That's a pretty big negative. There's some that slow you down. This one, you just stop. So I think I'm going to have to put this down into Triple Deluxe tier. I was trying to think of the equivalent. This is the equivalent to D, I'd say. Just because not being able to move at all while using the attack is pretty bad. In addition to that, it automatically retracts after a second, so you're vulnerable for like a second after using it, so not great. Then we have Cutter. You basically send a small projectile, which in this game happens to be Kirby's face, forward. It doesn't increase your movement, it doesn't decrease your movement, but you are left basically completely vulnerable. While you have that shot out, you can't fly, you can't duck, kick, nothing. I want to say that it also goes in D, due to the fact that it leaves you vulnerable, just out in the open, no way to defend yourself after shooting out the projectile. Now we have Bomb. It doesn't have as much of a movement penalty as, say, Spike does. You briefly slow down as you throw the bomb, and you have 3 different arcs that you can throw the bomb as a projectile. Close, far, and really far, depending on how long you charge the button. So it basically can cover the entire front of the screen, potentially. It doesn't slow you down that much, so I'm gonna put this in B, Return to Dreamland. Next we have just Stone. It's better than most Kirby games. I mean, so here's the thing. You just turn into a rock. When you're this rock, you can't take damage. Any regular enemies I should say, that run into you will just die. But you're just so slow. And like, I'm sorry, it's so awful. I think the best way to use this move is to cover yourself in rocks and quickly kind of burst out of it, because you kind of have a little bit of an explosion whenever you come out of it. In that case, it's almost similar to Spike, except it has a smaller area of effect. I think this has got to be our first F, Star Allies, you know. Next we have Spark. it's, in my head I want to say that it's better than rock, than stone, but it's essentially the exact same effect, except you have a slightly larger area of effect around you. You're still moving incredibly slow. I think you move a little bit faster than stone. I think this has got to go, this has got to go in D tier. No, these are abilities on their own. They're not meant to be great. But then we talk about ice. This is one of the best forms of ice, and I'm not even joking. You have an area of effect around you on the x-axis, like you don't have any vertical coverage really, but around you, you will freeze any regular enemies, which can then be used as projectiles. The move slows you down a bit, but you can just use it and stop, and you won't, you know, it'll quickly activate and deactivate. You won't lose too much speed. I think this has gotta be A. I don't know. No, I feel like to be A, you have to at least have positive effect on movement and a good, solid, good effect. And ice just doesn't have that. It's a great effect in terms of an attack, but movement, it just doesn't do it. So now we have to talk about the double ups. Double burning. It's burning, but it lasts longer and goes faster and has a larger area of effect. It's S. If you watch a speedrun of this game, they almost only use double burning because it's that good for speed. So that's easily got to go in S tier. Double spike. So the only difference here, literally the only difference, is you have a little slightly longer area of effect. I wouldn't even say it's double as large as the original spike. It's like 1.5 times, I'd say. Other than that, it has the exact same effect as spike. It works much better as a screen clearer because you're going to be reaching a lot farther in. This might just barely dip its toes into B. Just barely. But we do have to talk about cutter. So, double cutter is the exact same as cutter. You still send your face, you can't fly, you can't duck attack. It's just a bigger projectile and it has spikes on it. And it's not that much bigger than the original projectile. I think this still goes in C. The top of C, but it's still C. It's pretty boring as well. So now, double bomb. This one's pretty good. So, it doesn't decrease your movement by that much. It's similar to bomb, where you kind of briefly stutter as you throw it. But the only difference here is instead of throwing what essentially is your bomb, you have like homing missiles. Instead of throwing it in one direction, if you charge it up, you shoot the missiles in all 3 directions, and then they home in on the enemy. This is essentially a forward screen clear for you, because it's going to hit everything in front of you. There are very few exceptions to that. And I feel like because it's basically half of a screen nuke, it goes into A, despite the fact that it slightly slows you down. Double stone. So you recall stone, right? Where you turn into a rock and slowly walk forward. You can't jump, you can't duck, you can't fly. You're just a bigger rock, dude. I want to say it's still F, because essentially nothing changed. I mean, you're bigger. It's funny. I almost want to give it D just because it's funny. No, no, it's staying in F. All right, big spark. So, it doesn't suck as much as I wanted to initially say. It covers a large portion of the screen if you're not moving. If you stand still and move it and use it, it covers, I want to say, probably a third of the screen and a sphere around you. If you start moving, it kind of pulls in towards you, and it's a very slow movement, so it's not really that worth moving while using it. It's not great. It completely stops your movement for the whole time you're using it. I want to say it's about equivalent to spike. Just like double spike gets C, I think double spark gets C as well, just truly because it covers so much of the screen. Double ice. See, remember when I said that single ice just on its own was one of the best abilities? I think it's better than double ice. What you do is you basically start rolling into a snowball and you roll forward. It doesn't necessarily slow you down, it's the same movement speed, but you can't jump with it, you don't get any projectiles. once you press the button to turn into a snowball, you're kind of committed to just staying on the ground and moving forward. Very similar to stone, you're just moving a slight bit faster. I think this is probably going to go at the top end of D. And remember, it doesn't mean that it's useless when it's in D. That just means like the things in B, A, and S are that much better. Speaking of which, now we're starting to get into the crosses, and here we have the curling stone, which is the cross between ice and rock. I feel like this is the first one where I'm gonna give a little bit of points for the cool factor, pun not intended. You're a hockey puck and you just kind of move along the ground. You can jump. Your movement speed is slightly faster than walking, but only if you end the attack soon enough. That being said, you're not damaging anything that you don't run directly into. So it's basically got a slight movement buff, but also there's like no hit range. I think I'm gonna put it into B. That feels right.
It's over, Anakin! I have the high ground!
So this is a dual-sided lightsaber. It has one attack where you spin the saber in a circle, attacking enemies both above, in front, and behind you, which is a pretty dang good area of effect. In addition to the fact that it does not slow you down at all, it's cool. It's so cool. I think this gets the second S tier, and not like it's the cool points. We can all agree on this. It's the cool points. Rock and spike. You create a drill in front of you and kind of move forward with it. It pulls you along at the speed of Kirby's running speed. And then once you release the button, it shoots out in front of you as a projectile. I really like this one. It does only hit directly in front of you, so the enemy would have to collide with the drill to be affected by it. But you're moving at movement speed. It shoots a projectile at the end that actually pierces walls. Very few projectiles pierce walls. I think that's also gonna, I have so few in A. It's too restrictive to put in A. The fact that you can't, like if you use it in the air, you just fall straight to the ground. It's too restrictive to put in A. I think it's gotta go at the very top of B. It is the baseline. It has to be better than drill to be an A. Dynamite. This is rock bomb. Now, if you had asked me a little while ago, I would have told you this is F tier easy, because what it is it is a screen nuke. You throw it, you wait 2 seconds, screen's nuked. It also deals damage to Kirby. However, recently I found out that if you press down, you can tank that hit for free. That being said, it will slow you down when you tank that hit, but it's a screen nuke. I think the worst part of it is simply the fact that you have to wait 2 seconds for it to explode, but you can do whatever you want to the dynamite before then. You can kick it forward, you can just chill with it. You only have to put the hat on to protect yourself at the very end of the explosion. I'd say the only way it really falters is that it just doesn't do a ton of damage to bosses. We have Bomb Cutter. I hate to say it, it's cool, but in terms of effectiveness, I think it's the worst ability in the game. You throw a shuriken directly in front of you. While the shuriken is traveling, it's invisible, and then it hits an enemy and pops. The problem is it's very hard to aim this attack. Not only does it only go straight in front of you, there's no option to throw up, no option to throw diagonal, just in front. It's so hard to hit the enemy in front of you because you can't see the travel time. It seems inconsistent. I know it's not, but since you can't see it moving, it's just kind of a figure it out kind of ability. I think it's F. It's so cool. I wish you could, if you could throw it in different directions, it'd easily go into like A, maybe B, top of B, but you can't. And the travel time is hard to figure out. It's gonna go in F for me. I'm sorry. I think people will be disappointed from that. Snowman. This is, obviously, as you guessed, Ice Bomb. You just cover yourself with a snowman and you can move freely as if you were normal. You can't fly. You're covered in a snowman, basically invincible until you run into something. The snowman explodes, attacking enemies nearby, and you have like a half second of cooldown after that. You can't move. I mean, you're invincible and you're able to move around. That's pretty powerful on its own. Thing is, it's lame. You know? You don't have any different movement. You're just covering yourself and moving around as normal. I think that's a solid beer. Yeah. Yeah. It'll go like halfway up. I don't think it trumps like regular ice, but it's pretty good. Next we have Firebomb, which turns into the fireworks ability. You press B 3 times and you explode with fireworks, bigger every time, higher every time. That's my cat. Hello. Your third hit is just about half of a screen nuke and you pop really high in the air. Your movement speed is almost imperceptibly slower than your regular movement speed. I've gotta give a little bit of props for it being really cool and fun to use. In addition to the fact that it hits just so much of the screen while you're in the middle of that explosion. You're ruining my mic sound. I think it's going in A. That's another A one. A lot of bomb in A, huh? This is Fire Spike. You turn into a bow and arrow, tilt back, and just aim and shoot. It does have the possibility of hitting the entire right side of the screen, or I guess whatever direction you're pointing, but it's pretty hard, more so than other abilities, to hit exactly where you want it. In addition to that, if anything runs into you while you're aiming your attack, don't do that. You get hit, and you're knocked out of your attack. This one's like almost worse than like regular Kirby, right? Because at least as regular Kirby, you can just like suck in front of you, you have all that covered. It's definitely below Shuriken. I have to do that. Spike Cutter. You grow 2 giant limbs and they kind of snap shut above you. It covers a huge amount of the screen, but you are completely still the whole time you use the ability. You can hold it as long as you want and any enemies that run into your sides will get hit. And once you release it, snap above you. It's gonna be hard to take any damage using this ability. The only way I could see you easily taking damage is if you use it in the air and you fall down onto an enemy directly to take damage, so like, you're pretty safe. It's just, you gotta be still to use it, which consistently lands abilities into B tier. Ice Spike. You become a snowflake. That's kinda it. It's almost just like Spike. The only real advantage this ability has over like regular Spike is that you freeze the enemies that you run into and shoot them out as a projectile. It's funny because it's slower than regular double Spike. So I want to say it's just even with it, simply for the fact that it's slower, but you shoot out projectiles of enemies you hit. So we'll keep it even. Ice Cutter, which is ice skating because you got little things that cut the ice on your feet. It's cute. I feel like this is one of the few joke abilities in this game. So while you're skating, you move the same speed as walk speed. It's kind of cute. Again, you don't damage anything unless you jump or if you change directions. You kind of like skid to a stop and kind of shoot out little ice flakes that hit enemies. You know, I don't want to put this in D because I kind of like the ability. I'd say this is probably like, I keep doing this where I'm like, I could go either one. I want to put it in D just because like using the ability on its own, it has no effect. Like nothing happens. You're just moving now. I'm going to put it in D. Take it or leave it. Speaking of D, Electric Bomb. It's, you know, actually, it's very similar to Ice Bomb. You can move around and jump. You're a light bulb. And once you let go, you kind of pop. Here's the difference. If you run into an enemy as Ice Bomb, you explode and hit the enemy. If you run into an enemy as the light bulb, I guess the idea is you're fragile. You'll get hurt. You have to release the button to be able to hit enemies, which is a super specific condition. It's actually worse than Rock, other than the fact that you don't go slower, now that I think of it. Electric Rock. You shoot out a rock. Don't ask me, I feel like they came up with nothing. They were like, but Earth is literally like, it cancels out electricity. What do? You have a rock and it's yo-yoed by electricity. You shoot it out forward and after it hits something, it bounces kind of like, you know, that screensaver that's on TVs? Yeah, it kind of just bounces around the screen, just hitting whatever it hits and anything that's in between you and it, because you have that string of electricity. It can potentially cover the entire screen. You don't slow down at all for using it, and it's also very good. I think that's an S. I think that's another S. We have Electric Spike. So Electric Spike kind of brings back the ability that Plasma had in previous games, where you could make a shot of electricity in front of you, or above you, I mean. This is that ability. My problem with it is it's super specific. You don't want an enemy to hit you from the sides when you use it. You have to hit from above. So it's a D. I think, wow, there's a lot more bad moves than there are good ones, aren't there? Speaking of which, Electric Fire. I feel like this is the second of the joke abilities. You stop for a second, rub a towel on your head? I couldn't tell you why. I think the static electricity builds up so much that your head catches on fire and you just run forward. No jumping, no nothing. You have to just run in a straight line. If you run into anything, it dies. If anything hits you from above, it dies. You're practically invincible, but it's so restrictive. It's funny though, but it's gotta go in F tier. It's a joke move and it's nothing but that. So, speaking of joke moves, Ice Fire, Ice Burning, sorry. Again, they thought of everything they could possibly do and they're like, what if you just become a block of ice and it gets melted? It lasts for a second and then it's over. If any opponent runs into you while you use it, they get hit. There's no other use to it. You kind of just make a little bit of an area of effect around you for a second. I have to directly compare this to Spark, where you're forced to stay still during it. Your area of effect is a little bit smaller than Spark, and it only lasts for a second at most, and then you have like your half a second cooldown. It's gotta go in F. I have no choice. I told you, Ice is kind of a stinker. Not in this one though. Ice Electric. You become a refrigerator, and depending on how long you hold the button, you shoot out 1, 2, or 3 pieces of food that heal you. Not only that, these pieces of food that you shoot out act as projectiles. It's almost like the missile bomb ability, except if you want, you can go pick them up and heal yourself. I'm sorry, that's just too strong to ignore. If there was a proper boss rush or difficult mode in this game, this would be easy mode. Bomb Spike. This is a Gordo ability, and I believe it's the only time that Kirby's been able to have like any form kind of comparable to Gordo. You kind of just turn into a Gordo, and for a little bit, you can float around freely on the screen. You press left, you go left. You press up, you go up. You press down, you move down. You're suspended in midair if you use it in midair, and when you release the button, you explode, and you send spikes flying everywhere. In terms of movement, it's nothing. It's nothing because you're slow for so long, and you have to use it for like a second to be able to explode, so you're guaranteed losing some speed. I gotta say, I think, I want to say it goes exactly right there. Under normal ice, but over Ice Bomb. Because it's useful, it's just incredibly slow. Burning Cutter. I need to make this clear. You don't just pull out a sword. Kirby looks up, opens his mouth, and you have a sword. With this sword, you can either swing it in a circle very similar to the Electric Cutter ability, or you can raise it straight up into the air and just kind of hold it. If you wanted to like make an area of effect above you as you walked through, you'd have that. Or you can throw it forward as a projectile. This is the only move in the game that has like a move set. There's the only one that you can do multiple things with. It gets S only on that, but the fact that it's a fire sword and has a very great effect otherwise, it's great. It's S tier. It's easy S tier. Fire Rock. You turn into a volcano. You cannot move while you're doing this, but you just keep shooting projectiles in whatever direction you press. You'll start upwards, and you can either move left or move right. I feel like this is going to be a bit of an unpopular opinion. Obviously, you lose all movement with it, so that's just not a thing. Number 2, if you commit to a direction, say you start shooting forward, and an enemy comes at you from behind, it's gonna hit you, because you're not gonna be able to turn back fast enough. It's a pretty consistent, like, attack forward, but it only covers one side at a time, and it takes time to get back to the other side. You stand completely still. I think it's D. I'm surprised with like the variety of different abilities that I'm putting in different spaces, because I was just thinking, oh, if it fulfills one of the things, it's going in like A or B. If it fulfills both, it's B or A. If it fulfills neither, it's C, but it's like more complex than that. Some things increase your speed by a lot, some decrease by a lot. It's fun. So then we have a doozy to talk about here. Stone Cutter. This has a couple of different possibilities. I think in terms of a cool rating, it definitely gets it. It brings back the animal buddies from the previous 2 Kirby games, Dreamland 2, well, not the previous 2 directly, Dreamland 2 and Dreamland 3, which are prequels to this game. Depending on which animal buddy you will have a different form of movement, and I will go over all of them now. In terms of worst to best. Kine, you're a fish, you cannot move. Even if you use it underwater. I was surprised to find this out. If you use this underwater, you're a fish. You'd think you could, I don't know, it'd be super powerful in the few situations that you can use it, but no, you still just sink to the bottom because you're a rock. Number 2, you could get Rick. Now there is one point in the game where this character specifically is required because his gimmick is that he can wall jump. Kirby in this game is very limited in the way that he can float, so you won't be able to float like directly up to something way up high. You need to use Rick's ability to wall jump up it. Now number 3, you could get Choo Choo. Choo Choo cannot move unless you jump. If you jump, you move forward a bit, move back a bit, wherever you want to go, you land, and you're stuck again. It's not great, but the movement is slightly faster than Rick's, so I would say it's an upgrade for sure. Next you have Nago. Now these next ones I would say are properly getting good. Nago can double jump. That's like it, but it's better than not being able to jump at all or jumping once. Nago can also walk, so that's good too. Now we're getting to the good stuff. If you get Ku, you're able to fly freely, not indefinitely. Similar to Kirby, you have like a limit, so you can flap around a bit, hit the ground. You can't move when you're on the ground, but you don't really need to because you're gonna be in the air while using it. Freedom of movement while invincible is pretty good. Speaking of freedom of movement while invincible, you could get Pitch. Pitch is this tiny little bird that cannot move while on the ground unless you have momentum from a jump. If you jump, you move at a speed much higher than any of the other animal buddies. Not only that, you also have the ability to fly just like Ku. Now you're smaller, so you're not going to be affecting as big of an area, but you're invincible. You can just fly through stages like this and just win. It's that easy. In accordance to that, I think this has got to be the last of the S tiers, because if you get Pitch, you're set for life. It's done. And then we have one left. Do I even do this one? So this is the ability that you get at the very end of the game. Huge spoiler, by the way, where it's kind of called Crystal Ribbon. You have a crystal that shoots projectiles in front of you, and Ribbon carries you to fly freely as you would if you were like a Gordo or something. And the game turns into a shoot 'em up, so it's not comparable to any other ability, although I would say it's probably pretty strong. I'm just gonna rate this on enjoyableness for me, so that'd probably just be A. I enjoyed it. It's a fun little change of pace for the final boss. It's not difficult, but it's cool, and I think that'll do it. I think I've made many friends and many enemies with this list. I feel like at least we can all agree on F, right? Like the Star Allies tier, like it's all the stinkers. I can see people maybe disagreeing with the ninja ability, with the shuriken ability, but the rest are like, they're literal jokes. You're meant to see it and laugh. Except for shuriken, that was supposed to be cool and it's just not useful. And then my S tier I feel like is definitely set in stone as well. Except for maybe like the stone electric yo-yo, because that one's like, it's not situational, but to activate the move, you're shooting the ball forward, and that means that's the only area you'll be able to directly affect whenever you want. If you want to hit something behind you, you have to like kind of wait for it to go behind you, but I just think it's so versatile that it deserves S, in my opinion. Anyway, thank you all for watching. If you have different opinions, if you have one that I just absolutely completely messed up and you need to let me know, thank you all for watching and see you in the next video.